create a magnetic brand that isn't just about what people see. It's about the clarity and foundation that the founder brings and grows into a world your audience wants to participate in. I really have swapped out this world or this idea of branding with world building, because in today's world, it's so much deeper than a logo, than a color palette, than all of those things. It's how do you get people to care and engage in what you're doing? So that's my perspective around branding. So what is a brand really? Here is a very detailed explanation, but it's really about the lived experience of your values, your story, and promise. And this is how it's expressed consistently across every touch point, so the right people recognize, trust you, and choose you. So what does that mean? It basically means that your brand and the business that you're building really is rooted in what are you trying to do for other people? What is your intention with them? You'll hear me use the word intention a lot. And so I think what people get confused in a lot of the times is thinking that you have a say in what your brand is. And that sounds a little backwards, but I'll explain. So your brand is not what you say it is. So I could say as myself, Asia is super high fashion and like I'm really cool and all of this stuff. That doesn't actually matter if that's not how people perceive me. They're like, Asia's like the home girl. She's fun. She's like going to tell you how it is. That's actually my brand. And so if you translate that into your business, it's you can do all of these things to build a world that people can thrive in. But at the end of the day, it's what people say that your brand is. It's not what you say it is. So keep that in mind, that sometimes you're a little bit out of control of the perception of your brand, but you, through these tools that I'm going to share, is really about how do you craft the experience and how do you craft that messaging. So as the founder, a powerful brand starts with you. I think we kind of know that, but some people don't know that. And a brand is actually twofold. It is the inner expression. And so that's everything to do with you as the founder. It's your clarity, it's your vision, it's your foundation. And then there's the outer expression. This is where people kind of jump to, like I talk about the logos and the color palettes, but it's more than that. It's really about creating a world around your brand. So we'll get into the 7 pillars of world building, but I'm going to start with you as the founder. So the main thing I want you to take away from this is that if you ever feel like you don't know how to grow your brand or what you're trying to do with your brand, it's usually starting either from a lack of clarity of what it is you're trying to do, or you might have all that figured out, but then you're trying to figure out how does this translate into my business and the brand of my business. So if we're going to start with you as the founder, I'm going to talk about how do you achieve this clarity. And because I know some of you, I can probably go through this pretty quickly, but I feel like understanding what getting clarity actually is the biggest part of it. So there's 4 pillars of clarity that I like to think about. It's really understanding your core identity and values. And sometimes that feels vague. And I used to hate when people asked me, what are your values? I'm like, I don't know, world peace. But I feel like when you understand how you are operating, and this sometimes takes time, it allows you to mold your brand around that. The second thing is your purpose and your vision. Again, this was another question or pillar that I used to get very stumped on, because I'm like, my vision is to have a really big agency, but is that actually my vision? And that's where that friction is of people who are kind of running fast towards something when they're building a business, but it might not be in the right direction. And so understanding how you get to your purpose and vision is a really big deal, but I have a hack for you. And then the third thing is your brand energetics and expression. This is actually more about you and how you show up daily in your brand. If you're someone who is go, go, go all the time and that works for you, then that's going to be reflective in how your brand presents online. If you're somebody that is slower paced and needs to pace things out, then your brand needs to actually reflect that and set people up for that expectation of you. Maybe you're not the type of person that pumps out content every single day. That's completely okay, but figure out the cadence that works for you so you can set expectations of your audience. So that's an example of that. The fourth thing is your founder story. I've definitely talked to some of you about this before and we've worked through this, but the whole idea of having a founder story is not just for your audience, but it's also for you. It's also for you to be very clear on what are the pathways that actually got you to create the business that you are. And that is a story that you're going to lean on for all marketing purposes, but that's also really the birth of who your brand really is. It's your intention. So we're going to kind of talk about some of these. So these are some questions that if you are trying to go deeper on some of these areas, because again, this type of clarity is what's going to only help you build your world. But these are some questions that you can ask yourself. If you ever, I'm always going to plug a session with me. So if any of these ever have you stumped, then that's where we can book our one-on-one call and go deeper into it. And I'm really good at helping pull it out of you. But these are the 4 things. I'll quickly talk about purpose and vision, and also your founder story, because those are essential. So again, use this page, you guys will get this presentation as you, if you really want to do this work on your own or even just start the process. But how I said, having a vision and a purpose is truly, I think, the most important part of this clarity, because that's what's going to drive all of your efforts. And so some people are like, I don't have a vision. I don't actually really know what my purpose is. I sell cookies. Like, okay. But I feel like underneath that, there is something that's pulling you along. So if you're not clear on those things, you want to actually start to focus on your very next goal, because sometimes a vision might feel too far away or too blurry. But if you don't have a big vision of what you're running towards, then it's way better to just have a goal that you really want to focus on. So for example, some people are very clear of like, in 5 years, I really want a mega studio to do X, Y, and Z. And so that's where all of their goals are going to be contrived from. Say you don't really know, maybe you started your business out of passion or just out of a way to make more income, but now you want to take it more seriously. Then you want to lean more on identifying your goals. You really want to understand, okay, what actually is driving me to do this? What is a goal that I'm excited about? And this goal should be very personal up front, because again, you as the founder is the heart, you are the heartbeat of your brand. So your goal has to resonate with you first before you can extend it into a business goal. Something I forgot to say is that if you have any thoughts or questions, put them in the chat, but there will be a Q&A at the end, or we can just dive into any of the brand things that you guys are thinking about after I go through everything. But the second part of what I think is the most important part of getting clarity is developing your founder story. I'll get into how to use your founder story later, but essentially your founder story is, like I said, it's comprised of all the ways that, or all the lived experiences that you've had that brought you to create this thing. So say you are somebody who, this is a random story, but say you broke your ankle and you had a very terrible ER experience. So that kind of actually drove you to create like a med spa for broken ankles. This is really random, but like, let's just go with it. That is actually going to be a part of your founder story, talking about the story of why this was important for you to create. I had a broken ankle. I was in distress. I had to miss work for a week. There was a quick solution, but the doctors didn't give it to me. So I started to put together a team of doctors to help me fix my ankle in a cute way. Like, this is something I'm making up. But I feel like when you can tap into the things that actually led you and pulled you to start your thing, you really want to create a founder story. This that I have on the screen as an example, this is a client that I'm currently working with, and her founder story, she created it's a brand called Full Intentions. It's basically a physical personal training program, because she is a fitness trainer, but she also is a trained therapist, and she also is a coach. So she's doing all of these things that really marry mental health and physical health. But her founder story is something that I helped her pull together to really talk about the fact that she was a D1 player, talk about how being an athlete is actually more of a mental health thing than it is a physical thing, but then you also need special training. So I had her put all of those things together into a founder story, and this actually became her most engaging post on social media. It reignited her audience, because people connect with people, not just businesses. So a lot of this groundwork of getting clear on who you are, why you started it, and also the goals that you have is really going to help you create a brand that people care about, because like I said, people connect with people and they connect with stories. So like I said, how does this come together? I'm talking about your inner work, and I'm talking about your goals and all of that stuff. But really, like I said, this is for people that when you have that clarity, but your brand needs to catch up to where you are today, or you're in a pivot. Say you've had your business for a lot of years, but now the tide is changing. That's where you want to go back to doing that foundational founder brand work, because you will always kind of have a new story of even where your pivot is coming from. So that's where this really comes together, is identifying where you're going. But I will pause and say what you're really here for is world building. But I couldn't get to world building without understanding the work that you have to do as an individual before you start trying to think of the cool things to do with your brand. So again, this concept of world building is not about your logo, color palettes, fonts. That is the old way of thinking about a brand. Your brand is about creating memorable, consistent, like a memorable, consistent presence across all the platforms you show up on and offline. I'm really big on and offline. So this is a page that you will have and would want to reflect on and maybe screenshot it if you really, really need to, but you will get this presentation. But these are the 7 pillars of world building. So if you are in a place where you are thinking about how can I create a very solid brand that people actually want to buy from me, they actually want to come back over and over again, or they need to just know who I am on a deeper level and connect with me, these are 7 pillars that you can always lean on to check in with and see how can I activate these within my brand. I'll briefly list them all to explain what they are, because this is really the meat of what we want to talk about. But I want to preface this by saying that you don't need to start off trying to activate all of these. It's overwhelming, and some of us are a single like person in our business. We are a solopreneur. Or if you do have a team, this could be a great exercise to start to gather around and figure out how can you strengthen some of these areas. But I want to make sure that you don't feel like you jump in trying to execute all of these. So to go over the 7 pillars, it is your core identity and values, which guess what? You already did that because you did the founder work that we talked about before. There is storytelling. So storytelling is how we as humans just connect with each other one-on-one. It's been proven in the history that we have always shared information via stories. That's why when people tell stories online, we remember them more so than people who are just spitting facts at us or just showing ads or promotions all the time. You as a business owner might be like, I'm creating content, but no one's connecting with it. And I bet you your issue is storytelling. And so to create a strong brand, you really need strong stories. So this is where you can employ your founder story. This is where you can employ client experiences that people experience at your actual events or through your services. These are stories around your why. These are also stories around your products. If you're a product-based brand, it's why does this sock exist? Why is this cookie special? So tell the story of the ingredients, tell how they're locally sourced. That's really what we want to contrive stories around. Not to like kind of like put the highlight on UK, but I feel like we've talked about storytelling and how do you tell stories about the people on your team and how you bring that to life. That's another way you can employ your team as the stories that you're telling. And the whole point of this is to get people to care and to get people to want them to be involved with your brand. The other way is community engagement. I find that community engagement obviously is so much easier when you have something like a restaurant or a physical place people can go. But even without that, you can create a two-way relationship through your brand. This means that you are not about just broadcasting things. This is you actively engaging with your audience. This is as simple as making sure that you respond to every single comment on your Instagram page or your emails. It's how you respond. It's taking the care of customer service very seriously. That is all community engagement. It is also in thinking of fun activations like workshops. Rachel did a really cool workshop a few weeks ago where she actually brought her perfumes on a yacht. I mean, come on, and created a whole build your own fragrance experience. That is community engagement if I don't know it. So there are fun ideas that you can activate to just get people to know and to talk to you and to engage around your brand. there's events, and there's so many other ways that you can engage. But I would challenge you that any time that you have the opportunity to talk to someone who's just even near your business, inquiring about it, liking a comment, find out how you can just take the conversation further with them and think about ways that humans actually want to connect. And that is what we call community engagement. So those are the first three. We have four more to get through, and then we'll get into some stuff. The other one is multiple brand touch points. This is where I think people get a little bit overwhelmed because we are told to show up everywhere. To have a strong brand is to be on every channel, to have a thriving website, to do all of these things that are, quite frankly, just overwhelming. And while you should be on multiple places on and offline, it's not about doing everything. I'll give you some actionable steps after this, but just keep that in mind, is that my perfect formula for any brand is to make sure that you at least have a foundation of your brand that is not a social media channel. Because what happens with social media, one, you can't control it. Two, people can't always see what you're posting. We understand the algorithm. And then also, we're at the stake of it going down at any moment. Whereas if you have your own website, if you are on other channels, people always have another place to find you. So it's not about being everywhere, but it is about being in multiple places on and offline so that people can always find you if one of the vessels don't work. The other one is co-creation and feedback loops. What does this mean? This means inviting your audience to help shape what you build. This means building in public as well. A lot of founders think that their product has to be perfect before they can launch, and that is absolutely untrue. You want to actually start building a relationship with your brand audience the second you have an idea. This could be like, hey guys, what do you think about this? And you don't have to be on screen. I know some of us are afraid to show up and show our face. This is literally posting on your stories or asking your newsletter, hey guys, what colors do you like? Here are our final three that we're thinking of. That's how you kind of create a conversation and you see what people are thinking about. You can ask them what flavor of an item that you have if you're a food and beverage company, but it's always seeking their feedback loops. This is also thinking about, okay, this actually happened to me. I'll tell you this story. I started off my agency as an everything design agency. We did branding, we did packaging design, we did any kind of graphic design you needed, we did web design, literally everything. Over the years, what I started to realize is that I offer all of these amazing things, but people are actually coming to me for websites. They're actually, the 90% inquiry is websites. So I'm listening to that. I'm trying to force my other services. I'm like, okay, maybe we strengthen our websites, or we make websites the entry point to all of our other services and create an ecosystem around that. This is me letting what the audience is telling me into my process. Now, they don't dictate it 100% because I still do branding for very large brands. I still do all of those things, but it helped inform me why people are coming to me. And a lot of founders miss this. They are just so very bent on what they think is the right thing to do. And it is a balance. I'm not saying let the audience completely run your business, but listening to them and knowing how to listen to them is very important. And it also makes them feel connected with you when it's like, oh, that founder actually went with that color we voted on. That's crazy. Like, it's fun for them to feel like they are a part of your brand and that you're listening to them. The other part of this, the sixth one, is creating branded experiences. This isn't as big as it sounds, and some of these do overlap, but I'll give you some examples of branded experiences. If I am a photographer and on my website it says I do portrait photography, I do event photography, I do this, that doesn't feel exciting to me. Yes, that is just a clear list of capabilities, which you should have too, but there's an opportunity there to actually create a package that is branded, that is tailored to your audience. So if I realize, okay, I do all of these things, but people actually need headshots at events, and I also have a food specialty, to me, I'm thinking that's a branded package that people know that they can come to me and get all three of those things from in one package. I name it something cute, and that is how I sell people on me? Because there are a million event photographers, there's a million product photographers, but how do I make what I do stand out? That is branding. So it's also taking into account all the things that you do and how do you actually tailor them to your actual audience? How do you make them feel like, wow, this is everything I need, and you know me, you see me, you know my needs. That's branded experiences. That also goes down into experiential marketing. Experiential marketing is, again, I always talk about events because it's the easiest kind of idea of it, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with the brand Refinery 29. They started off as an online publication. They were for like the cool millennial girl. Maybe I'm just projecting on them, but that's who their articles are for. They were online publication. So it's 100% online. What they did was create an offline activation. This was an event called 29 Rooms, where they created 29 room experiences of different parts of their brand, catering to different readers that they had. This was an interactive experience where you could go into like a bouncy house or get hair products. Like, it was curated so well. And granted, they were a big brand, so they could create a big event like that. But this had nothing to do with getting people to then read something online. This was like, hey, we see you and we want you to continue to know our brand is speaking to you. So here's an experience tailored specifically to your needs, what we've seen that you like, and we want to give back. That is another example of a branded experience. I want to step back and say, creating a world about your brand isn't just about a transaction. That's what we are actually getting away from, because people don't want to feel like they're being sold to. They want to feel like you see them and that you care about them. And so all of these pillars that I'm going through is really about picking and choosing how you want to activate your audience in that way so that they feel like they are a part of your brand and not just being sold to. The last part of your pillars of world building, this is actually a little throw in, but it's to always be in a state of evolving. This is constantly evolving, or constant evolution, I should say. As we know, we change as people, we evolve as people. We see the climates change in our world of what's happening politically or just socially. Everything is always evolving. If your brand is staying stagnant, you are out of the conversation and you are not as relevant as you should be. And I think it also is just not being comfortable with how you are evolving, either as a founder or just paying attention to what's happening or what's happening in your audience's life. For instance, if I know that I only sell to soccer players, but God forbid their favorite soccer player passes away, it is going to be tone deaf for me to just continue to sell to them. That is not good evolution. It's now being like, okay, my audience is in a state of mourning. Is there a special service I can offer? How can I pivot just a little bit? You don't have to get off track to actually meet them where they're at today. A big thing that happened, unfortunately, is obviously the fires that happened in Pasadena. That caused a lot of evolution in businesses and brands to figure out, okay, what do we do understanding the state that people are in today? So that's also letting that be reflected in your brand. So maybe now it's like we have potlucks every Friday if you are a restaurant. Maybe it's something that is allowing your business model to evolve based on what your audience is actually experiencing. And this can be very micro and this can be very macro. But the whole idea of having a brand that's constantly evolving is also, it can be a little bit more internal as well. Sometimes you as the founder are just absolutely drained from something you used to be very excited about. But if you continue to push that thing, you're only creating a business that you yourself does not like, or it feels like you're just an employee at your own job, which some of us are, and that's fine, but we eventually want to get to just being the brand runner of things. But it's also being like, if I know that I no longer want to do websites, I'm talking about me personally, and I do, by the way, but if I said, I hate websites, I don't want to do them anymore, but how does that actually evolve with my brand? Knowing people come to me for that, maybe it's me changing my framework of, okay, websites are actually the tail end of what I do with you. They're not the front runner. How do I massage my audience to understand that we are evolving and they should be too? Are websites as relevant as they used to be? That's a question that's up in the air. So how do I evolve with the times and with my audience to make sure that I am always the person or the brand that they need at the time that it's happening? A very dramatic example of this and how a brand did not evolve is we think about Blockbuster to Netflix. Blockbuster didn't evolve as quickly because Netflix came in, and unfortunately they are no longer. But that's a prime example of how you should be evolving and thinking about what's happening in current culture. So the key message with all of this is the world around your brand is only alive if people can participate in it. So at the end of the day, out of all of the pillars that I stated, out of everything that we're talking about, if you just ask yourself, what is a simple way I can get people to participate with my brand just a little bit more, you're already on the road to creating a really good brand around your business. Your job is to create the infrastructure for connection and then invite people in. So that is the whole idea of world building. So the final part of this, I know I said a lot of just concepts to you guys, is how do you actually practically apply these things? This is a nice idea, storytelling, all of that stuff, but what does this actually mean for you to do as the founder? This is the fun part. So the first thing that you can do is optimize your social media foundation. I don't care if you're starting from scratch or if you've been in business for over 10 years, there's probably something you need to re-optimize on your social media. So this can be as simple as optimizing your bio. Does your bio, your biography on your Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're at online, clearly communicate who you serve and what transformation you offer? That is the only thing you should be leading with, because people want to know, how am I going to be different, or what's going to change in my life after engaging with your brand? And depending on what you guys do, and you can put them in the chat if you want to brainstorm a little bit, that will look different for all of you guys. But the second thing about social media is prioritize the platform that you're on. So please stop trying to be everywhere. I already said this before, but I found the key to all of this is choosing 1 to 2 platforms where your audience actually is. Don't choose a platform that's dying or you're getting 0 traction on. Find out where they are and show up there. This might be LinkedIn. This might be Substack. This might be things that you haven't actually thought of or are less popular than we know of, but choose 1 to 2 and choose to build community there. To me, that's the key place, because if we're just posting everywhere and hoping someone engages, we're wasting our own energy. But when you choose to go deep on 1 to 2 platforms, you can actually start to master the platform, understand how people interact on that, understand what you should be posting, the stories that you should tell on that platform through your content, through the written word. You will really actually understand how to grow. And from that platform, and once you strengthen that, then you can move on to more platforms. But a lot of founders make the mistake of spreading themselves way too wide, way too quickly, or too early. And so I urge you to really buckle down. So if we even want to talk about what are the 1 to 2 platforms you should go in and how to do it, I'm open for that as well. The other way to optimize your social media is through understanding maybe 3 to 5 might even be a lot, but like 3 storylines to communicate your authority through and be consistent. I'll give you an example. If I know that my own zone of genius is really about helping founders outline their goals, please believe that most of my content is going to be educating you on how to create goals that matter. That's where I'm establishing the stories around the time that goals changed my life or clients' lives. Like, you can go so deep into one pillar. So when you have 1 to 3 storylines or pillars that you really want to emphasize your authority around, stick with that. Don't try to post everything about your business at once. Maybe you're focusing on how do you actually get people to understand having their own signature scent is what they really need in the world. You know, you can find ways to really tell stories around a very specific pillar, because the deeper you go on a topic, the more engaged people will be. The more, think about even how you experience social media. When you're scrolling something and it feels like someone knows exactly who you are, you stop and you look at it. That's why things like people who do astrology online like get a lot of things. People are like, I'm a Leo, and so like they're going to engage with that content a lot more. So when you can find what that looks like for your audience, that to me is your golden palette. And then the other thing is understanding why you're using a certain platform. Your grid, and I've often said this to people, I treat Instagram, I'm a service-based business, as honestly a portfolio front. This will evolve, but I kind of just create it as my storefront. It's just so people can clearly see what they need to know about me quickly. That's also how you get around not having to post every day and get yourself on that content loop. This is really around how do you just make sure that people get what they need from your grid? So that's how you can optimize it using the 7 pillars. And then your stories are your conversation. That's how you're conversing with people daily on your social media and through your content. The second thing is, and I'm like, let me check for time. We're okay. We're doing okay on time. The second thing on how to actually employ these strategies is to create founder content that connects. If you stayed here for 3 months, you'd probably do excellent, to be honest, because people care. I said this before, people care about people. That's how you build a brand people care about. They want to know who's behind it. Think about why Apple is such a big brand. It has all of these pillars that are working for it. On one land, we know about Steve Jobs. That is a brand on itself. We know about the starter story about how he built Apple from scratch. We know a little bit about his personality and how it might have been problematic, but we know about the founder. We also know about these other stories of the brand and what they've built, but they all work together. So you focusing just on the founder pillar could be very powerful for your brand, of people understanding who is behind this, because maybe they just like you and that's why they engage with the brand. And so that is how you differentiate your brand. This can be through things like reel scripts. Start with one signature story. And again, you will get this, so you will have these tips for yourself. But start with a signature story and tell people why your brand got started. Make sure that you're filming in consistent backgrounds. That's also another way people are branded, because they remember you. They're like, oh, they're always sitting in their car right here. I know, I can tell that this is their content because it has these random things that are always consistent about it. You don't need a production set. You just need something consistent. And then there's creative feedback. So this is where I get more into creative exploration. You're constantly testing and refining and repeating. You're not going to be great at employing these pillars from the first time. So you need to allow yourself to experiment as you go. And the third and final area that you can start to activate all of these 7 pillars of world building is to audit and align your digital presence. So digital is taking it way beyond social and thinking about how your brand works together online. This is also what I call your digital ecosystem. It's how does your website, your blog, if you have one, your social media, how does that all work together to make sure that your audience is always up to date on what you're doing, knowing that you are there for them, because that keeps your brand top of mind. So your website strategy, how is your site set up? Do people understand what you do in 10 seconds? We did a whole workshop on Above the Fold where it literally is saying when someone lands on your website, you have 5 to 10 seconds to grab their attention and for them to know what you do, because we have such short attention span today. So do they know what you do in 10 seconds? If you only change one thing about your website, let it be the one-liner that people see when they first land on your website. Then there's SEO and AEO foundation. SEO is search engine optimization. It's when people search things in, and if your brand has content around it, it will pop up. AEO is kind of addressing the artificial intelligence, the AI of it all today. This is answer engine optimization. You can create content that answers very specific questions, and your brand can more likely or be more likely to pop up because you're answering questions. So think about the questions your audience always has. For me, if I'm talking about websites, people are always saying, hi, what platform should I be on? So then I'm going to create content called, what platform should you be on for websites, and answer that. And my website and my stuff is more likely to show up because I answered a very popular question. So you can go down a tunnel with that. Like, that is a really good marketing strategy, by the way. And then there's blog content, and that kind of goes into SEO too, but it's also just creating strategic content to build authority. So yeah, these are ways that you can actually take actions around employing these ideas of building a world around your brand on and offline. So the main thing I want you guys to remember is that this is inner clarity, where that bridges to meet world building. So inner clarity gives you confidence and direction on what all of your marketing strategies are even about. And world building is putting those goals into action. It's how you get the visibility and connection around your brand. And together, those are the brands that survive and go on and become successful and get all of these partnerships and get all of the clients or the customers that you want, because they've done both. We know powerful brands because, or a lot of the time, because we know their founder, and that founder had a lot of clarity. Think about the Girl Boss brand. We know Sophia from her crazy story, but that led into all of the businesses that she did. So that's how they are intertwined. And another reminder is please don't do everything at once. You need to know who you are. And when I say know who you are today. Know where you're at today. Know what you need today within your business so that you can build a brand and marketing strategy around it. And then you build a world that reflects that truth consistently. So again, say I'm moving away from web design and I'm moving more into consulting coaching. My content is now going to be tailored more into the consultant and the authority in that way versus the web designer. So that's how you want to think about who am I today and then build on that. And then a final reflection prompt is if your brand could only communicate one thing about who you are and what you stand for, what would it be? And maybe we can talk about that out loud together, but that is the one question you can think about to help activate the world that you want to build. So these are just some more resources if you guys want to go deeper. So again, figure out where you are and start from there. You can book a one-on-one session with me specifically because I talked about a lot of pillars today. So we can figure out what pillars are missing in your brand today, and then what are the strategies we can move forward to make sure that we're building a brand around the missing gaps of it. So you can book a session. When you get this PDF, you can click on these links. They're all clickable. And then you can also just connect with me on Instagram or TikTok, both at Die Free Studios. And then these two are me on TikTok doing it not too great, but I showed up and I talked deeper about world building. So I really break down what world building is. And then I also give examples of a brand that I came across on how they built a world around their coffee shop. So you can go deeper and look at things on there. So next, I will ask if there are any questions. We have a little bit of time, and they might not have to be questions. They can literally just be, you know, you talked about this. Can you expand on this? Anything that you guys want to talk about, we have a little bit of time for that. So I'll leave the floor to you guys. Love them. Thank you, Kristen. She's not in here anymore.
Oh no, I'm still here.
You are here. I was like, I just didn't see your face. I'm like, okay, thank you. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
I had a question because I do feel like when it comes to showing up, I launched my business this year. It is a natural hair care line. I'm just obsessed with curly hair and providing plant-based remedies for our challenges. So I find it, I don't know, the industry or the category is extremely saturated. So it's like a lot of the things that I'm saying has already been said by somebody else.
Yeah.
And finding the right messaging has been challenging to really get people to see like the authenticity and the real motivation. I've definitely shared my story, and that has actually, like you mentioned, that has done better than my other content.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out other ways. We lead with education. Like our main three pillars are like education, my story, teaching others on how to like, you know, do it at home, but also I do it actually in person. So I'll host a workshop with people on hair care. I'm curious, I guess, to pick your brain on that, on like
Yeah.
messaging and all that.
Yeah. Well, I will say this as kind of an overview of what you said is even if people have said things a million times, they haven't heard it from you. And that might sound like a little bit of a cop out, but it's very true because in my own path, especially with me showing up on TikTok, I'm like, well, people talk about stuff all the time. But when they don't hear it from your cadence or your way of doing it or your particular story, there's value in that alone. So I like that's an overview. We can still talk about the messaging, but I also want to always remind people of that because we feel like, well, I see this all the time. And, you know, but again, they haven't heard it from you. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is I'll ask you, tell me a little bit, because we have a little bit of time, like tell me a little bit of why you started it. Like, is there a personal experience or just what's special about why you started it as well?
Well, I feel like the story for like curly hair was like, oh, cutting it all off, embracing, you know, your curls when you're transitioning from relaxed to natural. And I did all of that. I didn't have that, you know, growth. I didn't have that confidence overflow. Like I didn't feel that liberation that everyone sold me on.
Yeah.
It took a while for me to accept my curls, and none of the products were working for my hair care routine, making it feel easy for me. Like detangling, like I hated that wash day was a full day for me. Like
Yeah.
wash day a full day. So that's when I started researching ingredients, and I started trying things that people were saying, like, oh, you can make your own hair mask at home using avocados or using aloe vera gel. So I tried it and I was like, oh, this is a whole lot easier to like comb through my hair once it has this stuff in it. So I eventually got my certification in formulation, and I got my certification from a UK accredited school. So I followed the European cosmetics regulations, and that's how I launched my full line to make it really easy for us to take care of our hair. So that's kind of how I got started.
Oh my gosh, I've already heard like 5 pillars that you could go deep in on each one, but I would say, I'm like, what's the first thought that I had? I have to like go through my brain. Okay, so I feel like for me, a lot of what you addressed in the beginning are the problems you are having. That alone are eons of content you can talk about because even to me, I heard starting with the line of, I hated the idea of a full day wash day. That is like 5 pieces of content for me specifically that you could talk about because that is a very real thing. And people feel, like you said, they still have the preconceived notions that you have to spend all day if you have curly or coily hair to get it done. And that's not the case. So you also leaning on content around your why and like these problems you're addressing and go deeper and deeper with that, the more specific you can get with those stories too. And then even changing the tune from like, people don't want full day to I didn't want a full day. I was not about to wake up at 6 a.m. and spend all day. Like, make it personal. And I think that's why I lean so much on people understanding who the founder is, because when you can lean on your own story, maybe there's a specific Saturday where it really took all day. That's a story in itself. And that's the kind of storytelling that is weaving in your brand's purpose, but we feel like we're just connecting with you. But we don't know that we're also subconsciously tying into your product because it's like, oh, she's talking about everything. Wait, UK beauty standards? That's a whole pillar of content. What are they? Why did you do that? Like, to me, that's all of the messaging is just pulling out these facts around why you did what you did and then constantly sharing that. So now it's not a game of like making up content or what should I say? It's literally just going deeper on my why in every way. And based on your story, I'm like, we have 10 things to talk about. So
That's great.
yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you. I
Yeah.
wrote that down, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, if you really want to go deeper, I'm always available for one-on-one calls, but I think my biggest thing is just to make sure everyone knows that even if you're doing the same thing as the next person, they literally don't have your lived experiences. They don't have your why and the same thing that brought you to your why. And that's where you can start to build your brand around. There's a really, you've probably heard of them, Rizos Curls. Like
Mhm.
they're another curl brand, but because they identified that we are for Latino women or people, and like it's very specific. So, and there's a why and there's a culture around it. That's a great example of a world building brand because it makes the people that it's for feel seen. And even me, I'm not in that demographic, but I'm like, let me try some like y'all are having fun over there. So you never have to also worry about like not getting everybody when you're
Right.
focused. But I'll go off on my tangent. I'll stop there.
No, awesome. Thank you so much, Asia.
Thank you. Someone asked in the chat, I see you, Rachel. Someone asked in the chat, what are 2 main platforms you recommend? Erica did. Erica, if you could briefly in the chat, just say like what you do briefly, and we can talk about that next. But I see Rachel, you unmuted yourself, so I'll jump to you.
Oh, I was just unmuting just in case we were going to chat, but
Oh, we can chat. Let's chat. I'm like, do you have any like questions or thoughts about anything?
well, I feel guilty because I have a one-on-one with you later today, so I shouldn't take up too much space. But just to say that this is all very valuable and exciting, and I want to hear what other people are working on. And we're all women starting businesses, so maybe we should talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you later, so we'll definitely get into it. But I also think there's power in us like just sharing as a group, as you said. So yeah, anyone feel free to jump in. Erica, I'll kind of jump to you since you asked the question in the chat. But if you could come on and kind of like tell us a little bit about what you do, and we can kind of brainstorm out loud of what those two platforms should be. Okay, you said I started an online print on demand Etsy kingdom business that has apparel designs. I'm like, oh, what's a kingdom business? I don't know what that
So, so actually, I started because I was on maternity leave in February, and I was like, oh, I just took a course to open up a Etsy shop, a print on demand. I thought, I was going to be making money and not coming back to work.
Yeah.
And have that flexibility, especially because I had my fourth child and the finances. So I was like, oh, I'll just give it a shot. So I created the Etsy print on demand, and I wanted to plant seeds of faith. So a kingdom business, it's dedicating my business to God, and have faith-based apparel like quotes, designs. So I started that in February, and then my listings, they just expired because I didn't do much about it. I had 5 sales family because when I took the course, they suggested to just like go out there, which I was scared.
Yeah.
And so I came back to work full time in August, and I just left it like that. And
Yeah.
I did open up Instagram, but I'm not active
Okay.
on it.
I have a question before I get into what platforms I think you should be on. Why aren't you active on Instagram? It could be for any reason, like you hate creating content or whatever it is, but I'm just curious, why aren't you active on Instagram?
I'm scared of creating, and I don't know where to start or
Okay.
what to do.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I have like we should definitely have a one-on-one too. Like we'll talk because I feel like there is a foundation that if people don't want to show up all the time, and I'll say some here in general, but if you don't want to like show up all the time, you don't know where to start. That's why I always have my clients start with their founder story because it's your story and you know it and it's your why. And there's different ways to do it, but start with you and start with why you created the business. Like that should be your content until other things inform what your content should be. And then I also think about content and marketing as you're literally just sharing what you do and your world meaning like, so yours is a kingdom-based business. So then a lot of your content could be about like what inspired you to start this or just like your relationship with, starting a kingdom-based business. What kind of things as you as a founder had to get to have faith to start in this way? Like really lean into that world of what you're doing because I feel like the kingdom part is really going to pull in your audience, and then the print on demand is how you're helping your audience because it's really for you. I think your content is really about you talking about more like of the, because you said they're inspirational quotes, or what did you say that they were?
Yeah, they're scriptures and verses from the
Okay.
Bible.
Yeah. And then when it's print on demand, are these in is it people like able to print out their own poster, their postcards? Like what is the print part of it? Like what do you offer?
Yes. So pretty much, if you go on Etsy and you go onto my website, so I created a couple of designs, and it's t-shirts. So you can purchase a
Okay.
t-shirt with my design. Yeah, so
Okay. Okay, so actually, I'm like, yeah, there's a bigger marketing strategy for you, but I think I feel like Etsy is always interesting because that's like B2C. And you actually could start to evolve your brand. And this is me jumping way ahead, but you could evolve it into like B2B, which is business to business. Because think about like if your audience, if you decided, again, this might need more clarity, like I talked about the founder part of things, but I think say your goal was, okay, I have these print on demands. Who are these good for? Of course, they're good for birthday parties or people who just want it. But if I'm thinking bigger, I could try to position myself to sell to churches or to sell to big conferences that are coming up, or think about who your audience could be. And then you could create a world around that. And when I say world, that's where your content starts to play into. So what is that? what does that audience need to know about you, depending on who your target audience is. So it is about like, why do we need inspiration? Why is having this shirt on me a powerful statement? What does this statement or this verse mean? That's where you go deeper into the content you should talk about and where to show up. Again, I think this needs deeper conversation, but something that came to me is you actually finding, I know we don't like the word Facebook. I know we think it's gross and old, but I think that Facebook is very powerful for groups. And I feel like you could tap your strategy and where you show up online could be, okay, I'm going to focus on Facebook, even if it's just for 3 months, and I'm going to find key groups and I'm going to show up in those groups, posting content directly to different church groups or faith groups or things like that. And it's not about selling, but it's literally about building relationships with the people in there. And then when the conversation is relevant, like, hey guys, I actually heard you say you're having an event. If you want, I have print. Like, it's waiting for those moments, but it's getting to know those relationships first. And that's your marketing content. So that when they click on something good that you say in the group, it could be unrelated to what you do. They go to your Facebook and they see like, oh, wait, this is a whole printing business. And you kind of loop them in that way. So a first thought that I came on is like, maybe you should be on Facebook and build up your Facebook page enough, but then you start to activate groups on Facebook and show up in those groups so that, again, when they click on your page, they see this world that you've created focusing on Facebook. I hope that helps. And it doesn't have to be Facebook. I know that sounds sometimes cringy, but that's kind of the idea of how I would approach it.
And to be honest with you, can I share something?
Yeah.
I literally created my Facebook account today, this morning.
Wow, it was meant to be. It was meant to be. Something in you knew. Yeah, it was meant to be. I love that. No, that's exciting. But again, if we can definitely go deeper, so I encourage you, because I'm very type A around like, let's like make sure we have the full vision or the full plan laid out and the goals set so that I can really direct you. But I do think just on what I'm hearing, that could be a really powerful play for you.
Okay, thank you.
We have about 5 more minutes. Does anyone have anything they just want to chit chat about? Questions? Asia, I'm overwhelmed. You said too many things. What should I do? Like, let me know. We have some time left.
I'm guessing you already said this, but you'll share this presentation with us.
Yes, I will share this presentation. It has clickable links, all the things. So, and I always say for everyone, just figure out where you're at today, because how I work with people, just in my agency, to give you context, is brand therapy first, again, depending on where you are, and then world building. But if you have a very strong foundation of your goals and clarity, we jump right into world building. But if not, be very honest about where you're at with things. Understand if like, okay, we're going into 2026. This is honestly the first time, the best time for everyone to just kind of like say, what do I want to happen next year that I can control? Because we live in a crazy world. But I think now is a good time just to see like, what are some goals that I have and what would I really like to do? And where am I today? When I say, where are you today? It's really thinking about, I go as deep as like, what do you have capacity for in your week to execute? Like, let's start there. Because we could say, I'm going to make my website tonight, but do you actually have the capacity to do that? So let's start there. And I think evaluate where you're at and then look at the 7 pillars and say, okay, I'm really great on here, or maybe I have none of these. Let me choose one to focus on and see if I can build on that. Choose a platform, start building on there, and then start building on each pillar. So I encourage people to start where you are today and to build from there, and just one thing at a time, because running a business is already 90% of our job. Building the brand on top of it is like, how do I have the capacity? But it's what makes your brand live on. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. If you think of questions later, if you have anything you want to say, email me, book a session with me. I'll also put it directly in the chat just so you guys can save it before we log out. But I'm here to help you brainstorm, to even work past blocks that you have. I'm just here to support you in your marketing journey. So